The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
And welcome, wrestling fans, to the Ice Hour. This podcast is aimed at promoting the world of Division III college wrestling and is named for the late Hall of Fame coach Dave Eisenhower. Here we'll talk about topics and news that's relevant to those who compete for the love of the sport in Division III. The Ice Hour is sponsored by My House Sports Gear. Check out their line of wrestling gear and apparel at myhousesportsgear.com. Subscribe using your favorite podcasting app by going to matttalkonline.com/ice. Now up another episode of the Ice Hour, a D3 Wrestling podcast. We're going to head to Dubuque, Iowa, talk to the head coach at Loras. His name is Mr. TJ Miller. TJ, having a good season thus far, unbeaten, one of three Iowa colleges that are all unbeaten and ranked in the top 5 in the country. Got to be an exciting time for you, and welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Been a fan of the show for quite some time now.
Even though it's named after an East Coast guy, we've got a lot of good wrestling there in the Iowa Conference, and you grew up wrestling around the Iowa Conference. Of course, for those who are unaware, and if you're following Division III wrestling, how can you not be aware? But your dad, Jim Miller, longtime coach at Wartburg, multiple-time national champion coach as in the individuals and, of course, in the national duels. But you went there, wrestled there. What was it first like wrestling under your dad at Wartburg?
It was awesome. I mean, he's one of the greatest coaches, I think, in the history of the sport. But it also had its challenges too. It is your dad, and you go to a lot of kids go to college and maybe get away from their parents, but it's like my academic advisor, sometimes my professor, obviously the head wrestling coach. So I was around him quite a bit, but no, I mean, it was a great experience and one that I would not want to change for the world.
You're a 3-time All-American, and your junior year you won a national championship, and then you fell just short your senior year, losing in the finals. How much did that finals loss kind of drive you in coaching?
I think it drove me big time. Felt like I left one out there. Took me a while to probably get over that or even talk about it, but yeah, it was a match that clearly I've always kept in the back of my mind for, God, even till today. There's probably not maybe a couple days go by, but I always will rethink about that match. So yeah, it was definitely a driving force, and I think I've used it to my advantage in coaching. So yeah, I definitely think it definitely added to motivation to get into coaching for sure.
When you're in that position, you guys at Wartburg, well, when it was you guys, you're obviously not you guys anymore, but when you're wrestling at Wartburg, and then, of course, the rivals up there in Augsburg, when those guys are in the finals, you're the enemy. Nobody's really cheering for you except for your crowd. I mean, when a Wartburg guy's out there, Augsburg and everybody else is cheering for you, and vice versa with those guys. So what's it like to be an athlete in that type of position, knowing that you're pretty much going to be you're not being cheered for here except for by your own fans in Waverly?
I think I kind of embraced it. I always liked going up to Augsburg rather than having, Augsburg come to Waverly. I like being booed. There's no better feeling than when you go out there and you kind of silence a crowd. And then that's the thing, you go to nationals every year. There's other programs that do a good job, but for the most part, the biggest fan bases are Wartburg, Augsburg, and then there's a few others. I know Wabash has brought a lot of people. I know lacrosse in the past has brought a lot of people, but it's awesome. I mean, that was the way I liked having it. And we're trying to do a better job with Loras to get a larger fan base there. But I mean, it's a good thing when you're winning and there's more people. There's a lot of people booing. They wanted to see maybe probably the underdog win. I mean, that's just the nature of sports. A lot of people root for the underdog, and I think as an athlete, it was just extra motivation to want to put on a performance.
Looking at this year's Loras team, undefeated, ranked 5th in the country, have a win already this year over Augsburg. So, I mean, 1 and 2 in Division III have losses. Augsburg's got a loss, Wartburg's got a loss, and then you guys are sitting there unbeaten at number 5. as we said, one of 3 Iowa teams. Grandview ranked number 1 in the NAIA. They haven't lost since like Nixon was president. And then Iowa ranked number 4 undefeated. So, when you look at where Loras is in the landscape of wrestling in the state of Iowa, it's been a rapid ascension. I mean, Loras is a good program, but undefeated, 5th ranked in the country in your second full year as a head coach. That's got to be quite the accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of joking with some of the guys, and yesterday, last year, it was a kind of a breakthrough when we beat Central. They were undefeated and ranked 10th, and we were taking the whole team out to Buffalo Wild Wings right after. It was a big deal, and now it's just, I think the expectation and the bar is set right now at a pretty high level for our program. But for the most part, it's just taking it one match at a time, and one day at a time, and making each practice important. And then I'm trying not to look back or look at the overall picture until we get to the end. But I mean, that's kind of how it was last year. We used that format of taking it one at a time, one practice at a time, and we made each match important. And we kind of went on a streak even last year, and we looked back and we finished 6th in the nation, and we're like, how the heck did that happen? And I guess we're just trying to repeat doing that this year as well.
How much throughout the course of the season do you call back to Waverly? You call up Millboy, your dad, and go, "Hey, what did you do in this situation?"
He kind of got on me because I interviewed the magazine, and I said I called him all the time, and then he texted me because he read the article. He says, "You never call." So, I mean, yeah, if I get stuck, I think there's a lot of times I'll try to call him to bounce ideas. Obviously, he's my father, so I mean, we'll just have a conversation about, my 2 daughters, his grandkids, or, my wife, Allison. And sometimes it'll lead into some wrestling talk, and then sometimes it won't. It's just kind of hit or miss depending on the time of year. Sometimes he'll just call me and see what I'm doing, and we'll just talk. And obviously I'm probably recruiting, or I'm doing this or that. And he's kind of lost touch with a lot of the names that are in the state. So, sometimes I'm even educating him on who I'm talking to, or this or that, just because I think he likes, I think some part of him still has some drive, when it comes to that. And I think there's some things that he probably misses a little bit in coaching, but yeah, definitely. If I'm at a loss, or I'm stuck on something or a situation, I'll definitely, I never hesitate to give him a call. I guess it's a lot less frequently than I think about it, but I mean, it's just like a normal father-son relationship for the most part.
Do you find that you're coming into your own as a coach now that you've got a college program to take on, and one that obviously the name carries the recognition, but it's Iowa Conference Wrestling. It's the Big Ten of Division III. I mean, this is you're looking, even when you go out of the conference. Oh, Iowa Conference team. There's a reputation that you've got to uphold.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived it. I've grew. I mean, since the age of 7, when my dad started at Wartburg. I mean, I've known the ins and outs of the Iowa Conference, and pretty much Division III has been my life. All the way through college, and I kept close tabs on it, even when I was in New Orleans. And I guess I mean, I don't know if there was any pressure or anything. It's just I just knew what works. I knew a lot of things what works. There was obviously a lot of mistakes that I made probably my first year, but I think you learn more probably from mistakes that you make, and moving forward and making changes and tweaking things. And a lot of it is just kind of learning as you go, and just being able to improve and constantly just take it one day. I mean, literally, it's pretty simple. I never really look too far ahead. I take it one day at a time, and I just try to make an impact. I got written on my board, make a deposit today, and that's just something that just kind of reminds me that each day is going to count.
Question is you don't look that far ahead. So when you get out of college and the opportunity comes up to take a coaching job at a private high school in New Orleans, Louisiana, and you're from Iowa, what makes you want to take this job? How did that even unfold?
Well, a lot of people probably don't know this, but Paul Reedy, who's the now he's the associate head coach at Grandview, was on his way down there. I mean, we had a going away party for him, and he was going to take this Holy Cross job. I was planning on just staying up at Wartburg and helping out, and I'm just waiting for an opportunity. And sure enough, Nick Mitchell called or something happened where Mitchell called Reedy and got him to take on the job. I don't think it was a position that was open yet, but Mitchell somehow created it. And then Ryan Hess, who was the alum that was originally, he was an alum of Wartburg and Holy Cross, and his son was starting at Holy Cross. Called out of the blue, bought me a plane ticket. I went down there for a Minnesota Vikings Saints game, and that was all she wrote. I was young, and if I was ever going to do something different and get out of Iowa, the time was now, and it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up on, and I'm very grateful that I took advantage of it.
Yeah, and then for a while there was Louisiana kids heading back towards. It wasn't just Wartburg too. There were Louisiana kids hitting all over Division III up here, and they weren't just from your school. So it seemed to be a pipeline. And was that something you and some of the other coaches had talked about? It's like, hey, we got some kids. Let's send them to D3. Let's give them some opportunities. Or was that just kind of a natural thing that happened?
I mean, my dad was at Wartburg. He was still at Wartburg there for a few years. And I mean, just by going through tournaments and seeing the caliber of athletes that are down there, I was like, man, there's some good kids down here. And literally, I was just shocked that nobody, I mean, maybe minus Cumberland, was talking to some from Brother Martin. I think they still might even have a pipeline there. But other than that, there really wasn't many that were going on. And I couldn't fathom it. I couldn't believe it. And I just started calling my dad like, hey, random tournaments, I'd see a good kid, Connor Campo. Hey, you guys need to come talk to this kid. Jared Roman, you need to talk to him. Nick Michael, who I coached at Holy Cross. And, obviously having that postseason national tournament in Cedar Falls, only, 12 miles away from Wartburg's campus, was just going there, bringing athletes there, saying, hey, come ride with me. Let's go look at Wartburg and see what you think. And, for a while I'll say it was like almost 5 for 5. That's how it worked. They came, they saw, and they loved it. And that's just kind of how it all started.
One thing that people don't understand maybe about Louisiana wrestling is it's not just, it's not like one powerhouse. When, Jesuits had a strong program, Brother Martin, Archbishop Rummel. I mean, there's been power programs that have come through and put good wrestlers out on the college mats. They're just usually not in Division I because, like you said, you don't get recruited down there as much. But what were you most impressed with when you first got there to Louisiana? And maybe what was your preconceived notion of what you were going to expect and what you actually saw from the kids?
My preconceived notion, I didn't really have too many. I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I knew a little bit about Brother Martin just because I've had some teammates like Adam Manguno come. I knew a little bit about Holy Cross just because of Ryan Hess, and then obviously that's what I was brought down there to do, was to coach there. But even 2 hours away, Lafayette, and even up north like Airline, I mean, they're so spread out. And I mean, most of the wrestling probably is in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, but I just couldn't believe the quality of athletes. And some of the coaches are football guys, and they're just kind of doing it as a side job, and just the product of these athletes and how they are. And I mean, I was blown away sometimes just because a lot of these, I mean, you're in Iowa, every high school, multiple coaches on staff have wrestled in college. And I mean, a lot of these coaches down there have just played football, or maybe they wrestled a little bit in high school or had some knowledge of it. And I just couldn't believe how good some of these kids were. And I was like, man, these guys get in a college program, this could be, this kid just has unbelievable high ceiling. So I think that was maybe my preconceived notion. The only thing I knew was maybe the TV show Swamp People, and I mean some of the TV shows that are New Orleans based. I knew about the Saints. That's about it. I mean, I didn't know a whole lot about anything before I went down there, but I left knowing that, man, there are some quality athletes in that state.
One thing that I've kind of always looked at when it comes to the weight class debate in the high schools and when they shifted the weight classes is some of these southern states that are having problems getting people out, and it was their bigger athletes of football players. Did you see a positive impact on the weight class changes in Louisiana, or was it something that was just kind of you were consistent with your numbers throughout?
I think we were just pretty much consistent with our numbers. I was lucky that, Holy Cross has always had a rich tradition of wrestling. And not so much when I first got there, but I mean, just in previous decades, I mean, that's where wrestling started in the state by Brother Malchior. But as far as I don't think we necessarily just got more football players. I think it definitely helped a little bit, just because there was an opportunity like the 220, the 82, 195. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it was like. You'd have to ask someone from maybe the public school systems, because down there the Catholic League is big, and that's pretty much won the bigger class state championships is the Catholic League down there. But I didn't really see much of a change from football to wrestling, just based on the weight class changes.
And one thing before we started the interview, we were discussing a little bit about just backstory, so I got some facts right. And you'd said that Katrina hit Holy Cross pretty hard, and you guys were practicing in a tent.
Yes.
How do you practice in a tent in the relative humidity of 1,000 in Louisiana?
Very carefully. Well, let's see. Holy Cross. I mean, I've only really known Holy Cross to be on Paris Avenue. It used to be on 4950 Dauphine, which is in the lower Ninth Ward. Not a very good area, really, for New Orleans. It's right there, kind of. The Mississippi River kind of runs east to west, kind of snakes around New Orleans. It's a very hard place to get to, get around. It's a difficult city. There's not a million bridges or anything that cross over the Mississippi, but so when I got there, they were rebuilding the school. They were in the works of rebuilding the new sports complex, which was an unbelievable multi-million-dollar facility. And when I got there, though, there was just a cement foundation, and it was like a large carnival tent. And they had a couple Dolomer mats that we rolled up every day. That's where they did some of their PE. There was days where it was hot, and the mats were impossible to keep clean because of the sand that would just blow into this tent and the dust, and not to mention when it got to winter, it would get freezing and it was hard as rocks, and you tried as hard as you could to get space heaters in there because it would get cold. There was a couple months where it would get extremely cold, and I guess they had a dual meet the year before where it was like 30-some degrees, and they managed to do it. But really, I mean, you had no choice. So it was just, for some of the kids, it was probably all they knew. But, man, when we got in that new facility, it was unbelievable. You almost wanted to cry just because you were so happy that, you didn't have to like clean like sand out of your shoe and out of your ear. And it was, it was a very unique experience, but one I want to change for the world.
It's safe to say that the kids on that team had a different level of toughness than most high school wrestling teams.
Yes. I mean, there was almost I can't remember. I want to say because we were in Division III. Division III there would be like a 1A for Iowa, like the lower class, because of our enrollment numbers were so down, and they were trying to get back up from the Katrina, still being affected by Katrina, and yeah, I mean, I remember there was a time in January where we were like threatening the team to go back out in the tent because we thought they were kind of getting soft, with the brand new facility. They needed to start working harder in practice, and oh man, I think they changed their tune pretty quickly because we had an unbelievable state performance that year.
Now, the opportunity to come back to Iowa as a wrestling coach and within the Iowa Conference, how did Randy Stewart approach you, or was an opening that you applied? I mean, let's take us through that scenario.
I had no idea it was coming. I was happy in New Orleans. Holy Cross was. I still think it's one of the best jobs in America for a high school wrestling coach. I know Landon Williams and Dylan Azinger are down there now. They're also two Wartburg alums that took over when I left there. But yeah, it was just kind of I didn't know it till probably a year later that Randy Stewart actually met with my father to kind of feel him out, to think if I would be maybe wanting to. I don't know if my dad wanted me to. He probably kind of wanted me. He knew I had a good thing going down there, but a part of him probably wanted to get those granddaughters close. We were probably a month or two away from having Morrison, my second daughter. So the opportunity came. Randy gave me the overview of he's in the twilight of his career and he doesn't know how much. I mean, it's not going to be more than probably 2 years. And I just didn't know when another opportunity like that would come about. I was obviously being in the Iowa Conference. I knew Loras. I knew Dubuque. It's where I got married. It's where I won a national title. So there's a lot of good memories in that town, and it's really close to my wife's family of Lake Delhi. So yeah, I think that would have put a probably strain on our marriage if I turned it down. When the opportunity did come, I think my wife would have been pretty upset. So, I mean, she definitely wanted to get back closer to her family, especially now that the kids were getting older and the second one was on its way. So, I mean, there was a lot of things that went into that part, but I think overall, I mean, it worked out and it was a great decision.
Before we get to life back in Iowa, I do want to put a bow on the Louisiana experience because I'm a bit of a food guy. I like Southern cuisine. I'm from Virginia, and I like the Cajun cooking, and I like good gumbo and jambalaya. So I really take very I really like that type of food. What was the most eye-opening thing about maybe the culture shock from Iowa to Louisiana when you first got down there?
I mean, yeah, the food. There's a festival every weekend. There's always some festival, always some cook-off, there's always something going on. I mean, it was a different experience. It was awesome. The people there are great. I mean, you go to an LSU game, it's a lot different than Iowa. People are trying to kind of stay warm, and and the way they tailgate is just different. It's like literally a cook-off, like at every single tailgate spot. Probably the most eye-opening thing was the crawfish boils. That is just a big family thing down there. I mean, like right when it's about the end of wrestling season, there's going to be a crawfish boil about every weekend somewhere. And I did not know how to eat those things to save my life. I caught on quick, but I mean, it was awesome. It's just, I can't explain it. I probably put on 20 pounds of not very good weight, just being down there, just because it's just, you're eating so much, and I feel like it was just all the time. It was every weekend. It was Easter, everything. It just never stopped. And family is a big thing down there, and the Hess family, they treated me and Allison like family. I mean, we were invited to everything, and it was an awesome experience. The food down there is definitely something I miss. Every cuisine you can think of, it's unbelievable.
The key is you pinch the tail, suck the head, right?
Yeah, I guess you don't have to. If you suck the head too hard, you're probably going to cough a lot. You get a lot of that spice and stuff in your throat. I learned that the hard way a couple times, but yeah, it's pretty much just to eat the tail.
That's why I bring it up, because first time I did that, oh man, it was shot right. Oh yeah, the hot cayenne and Cajun spice right through my nose. It was just It's amazing that I even ate crawfish ever again after that. But of course, I'm still a gumbo jambalaya guy. I remember even in 2015 when the U.S. held the World Championships, Jim Ravanack had gumbo shipped from his place in Louisiana for us at the head table, and I'm like, oh, this is quality stuff. And it just once you live down there, or you go down there, it just doesn't quite match up or equal up. And you go to a Cajun restaurant in the middle of nowhere.
No, like I'll probably never be able to go to Red Lobster again. It's just not.
Well, you live in Iowa. That's probably not a place you should go anyway. I mean, take me to a steakhouse.
It's just not the same. I just can't have seafood anymore unless I'm in New Orleans. It's just it's just different. It's just so
kind
fresh.
Of my rule. I grew up on the Chesapeake Bay. I don't eat seafood west of Richmond, Virginia. That's just kind of my deal. Now, moving to Loras, and what did you inherit? What was the program like? I mean, Randy's was a winningest coach in school history there, but There's obviously there's the Wartburgs that are taking the good guys. There's the Grandview that are taking a lot of good guys. And, from a competitive aspect, how hard do you think it was going to be a Division III wrestling coach in a landscape where there's really good programs around you, as we said, and I want to give your SID some credit there, Jim Napperstack. He's the one who pitched this, and I was like, well, TJ's on my short list, and he said, we got the 3 undefeated teams, and they're all in the top 5. I was like, yes, let's do that this episode. So I want to give him the credit there, but back to the question is, you've got a lot of competition. How quickly did you expect to be, nationally competitive, ranked 5th in the country, finishing 6th at the Nationals?
I don't know. I never foresaw it being a year or two, or I kind of thought maybe, okay, 5 years, I could really maybe get something turned around. It was kind of I had like a 5-year goal. 5 years, I wanted to maybe break the top 4. At that 5-year mark. And I just hearing like coaches like Jeff Swenson talk about his 5-year goal in previous interviews. I've heard Nick Mitchell talk about it, how long it took him. And I can't remember how long it took my dad. I feel like my dad turned it around immediately. But I didn't think that it was going to be that quick of a turnaround. And I knew it was going to be extremely challenging. When we got here, I didn't know anything about the team. I got here late, so there was really no time to recruit. I think my official start date was August 1st that year, so pretty much everyone's committed. So I just tried to recruit the best I could. Just from my experience, there was a couple trips I went with my dad when I was coaching at Wartburg for a couple of years. Just trying to use kind of that experience and get to tournaments and show face and wear Loras stuff and try to get Loras out there. And yeah, Iowa was extremely hard. Like you said, I feel like every kid I talked to was talking to Wartburg or Grandview or, waiting for the D1 offer to come from UNI or Iowa State or Iowa or, all the other conference schools and NAIAs that are in the state. It was a huge challenge. And, I guess I didn't overestimate or underestimate anything. I kind of just worked as hard as I could and hoped for the best. And we got some pretty good recruits my first year. And then the summer, Randy, I think it was at our ISI camp. We have a big camp here at Loras every summer. Told me that he was going to move to Georgia, and I was just scrambling and trying to figure out, okay, now I'm going to be a head coach. Now what? Now what do I do? And it was a whirlwind. That was a crazy year. And I give a lot of credit to my head assistant. It was probably one of my best recruits I got was Trevor Kittleson. First person I really asked to take on the job. And he interviewed and they hired him, and he was so gung ho and he hit the ground running. And I don't think we'd be successful as we are without him, to tell you the truth. And it was like almost having an extra, just someone to basically lean on that has a lot of high energy and a lot of knowledge of different things. And I guess that's the best short version answer I can give you as far as what my expectations kind of go coming in.
One question I think you're probably going to get a lot, maybe not so much for the kids that might live in the Quad Cities, but what the heck is a Duhawk?
I did get it a lot. I got it from my family. I got that question from everyone, and for a couple weeks there, I didn't know, and then finally I did some research. I just assumed it was a hawk that lived in Dubuque. So I guess if you look back at the history, there was someone from the Detroit Press that was, I can't remember what Loras' mascot name was at the time. I'm not even sure if there was one, but someone from the Detroit Press was writing an article, and the Cohawks, they already had their team mascot, and I think he was just making fun of the team name. Said Loras College Duhawks beat the Cohawks, or take on the Cohawks, and I guess they did the college way back when did some sort of poll with the student body, and they put Duhawks up for it, and that I guess it won it over. So I guess that's kind of how the history came about it. Someone from the Detroit Press originally named us that, and it just kind of stuck.
Not the explanation I was expecting to hear. I thought it may have been another, I don't know if it was I wasn't thinking Co, although I always think it was strange that Co begins with a C and the Cohawk begins with a K, but we're not here to discuss the merits
No.
of other schools' mascots here in the Iowa Conference. Now, when we look at the schedule coming up, 11-0 right now, if you go through the Iowa Conference duels, which you've got coming up this weekend, you've got Luther, Nebraska Wesleyan, Co, and Simpson. You go through the schedule, a couple more duels. It could end at February 9th. You could be undefeated for the Iowa Conference Championship against Wartburg. Was this at the end of the schedule by the conference doing, or is this you and Keller putting your heads together and say, hey, let's wrap up the season with us two?
I think we have an end of the year conference meeting where the coaches kind of vote on coach of the year and the freshman of the year and all that, and then we kind of button down some of the missing duels that we have in our schedules. But I think that's when we said it. Last year it was just kind of, we got on a roll, and the end of the year it came down for the conference championship. We were both undefeated in the conference. We didn't plan on it last year doing that, and it was our best crowd that we've ever had. And obviously Wartburg, they ran away with it last year, and I think just that build up was kind of fun. I don't know, and I think we both agreed on it and made it on a Friday night, and it's going to be at Wartburg this year, and I think that was kind of by design a little bit. Obviously, we have a lot of work that we got to do and we got to take care of before we even get to that point. But yeah, I mean, they're by far for the last quarter of a century been the best team. I know we would like to finish and peak and wrestle the best team at the end of the year. And hopefully, if we do, hopefully it works out that way, that it is for a conference championship and we're in that conversation again. But, I mean, like I said, we got Cornell and we got UD and we got, those 4 other conference schools that you mentioned earlier. And, I know Co and Luther and Simpson, they're going to be gunning for us in Nebraska Wesleyan, and it's not going to be an easy task this weekend. So, I'll worry about that when the date comes.
When it comes to recruiting, one thing that kind of jumped out at me is when you said you're the guy, the Louisiana kids were 5 for 5. You're recruiting now against Wartburg, your alma mater. You know what they have to offer a student athlete, especially more the student part of it, because so much of Division III is student first and the opportunity to compete second. But how do you try to contend with that, knowing that I went there, I know exactly how cool the place is, and when you're competing for an athlete, how do you sell them on Loras when the team that you want to knock off within the conference is one that you have a lot of positive memories about?
I don't know if there's a perfect answer for that, but I guess I don't really worry about Wartburg, and I don't really try to steer anyone away from it. It's just it doesn't matter who you're coaching or who you're recruiting against. You're just trying to sell Loras, you're trying to sell Dubuque, you're trying to sell yourself. Wartburg's always going to get kids. You just gotta figure out ways for you to stand out as a program and you to stand out as a coach and what you're doing here. And obviously, we're doing some good things. I think we're going to have a pretty good recruiting class this year, just because like you said with Jim Naprasak earlier, he does a really good job of getting a lot of our product out there and the things we do in action shots and graphics and all that. And hopefully, just the better that we do, the easier recruiting kind of becomes. And it's never easy, but hopefully it just gets a little easier. And it's a lot easier to sell, 5th in the nation and undefeated than it was a couple of years ago, 2-13. So, I don't have like a template of how to steer kids away from Wartburg. It's a place that I went to. What am I going to say? I went there. I'm an alum. I can't. There's not a whole lot of negativity that can go into that. It's a place.
Well, the intent of the question isn't about negativity. I just want to, because you've got, if a kid's picking between the two schools, what both have to offer. So it's not like, don't choose them.
No, we just got to sell like the uniqueness of Loras. You've been to our campus. It's unbelievable. There's there's not a campus in the Iowa Conference that's like it. On the bluffs of the Mississippi River, I mean, Dubuque is an awesome town, and it's just kind of unique in D3. That I mean, you go to Central, there's Pella, and there are a lot of smaller towns, and we're kind of more of a bigger city in Iowa, so I guess that's kind of a selling point. Just the quality of education that you get here. I mean, we have different things that maybe they have to offer, and there's you're hoping that maybe this kid wants to study this, and maybe Wartburg doesn't have that, and maybe we can sell that a little bit better. I mean, but yeah, I mean, and to be honest with you, we don't go head to head much with them. I think we're pretty unique on where we're at, where we can recruit a lot of Wisconsin, a lot of Illinois, and we're also in the state of Iowa. So, just geographically, I think we have a good advantage here.
Now, one thing that's also unique is the distance between the two Division III schools within the city of Dubuque, the University of Dubuque and Loras College. For those who are outside of the state of Iowa and the Iowa Conference, what is that rivalry like in all sports? I mean, Coach McGovern and I do a show with the World Wrestling Resource, so I've got a little bit of insight on what things are like at the University of Dubuque. But how do those two schools interact within the city of Dubuque? It just seems like a very unique thing in Division III.
Yeah, I always tell you the truth. As that when I was competing, I always wondered the same thing. Like, how the heck would that would just be so odd to have another college 3 blocks away. When your competitors are like living amongst you, and you go to Walmart and you got to run into each other all the time in the aisle or something. But it's really not like that. I don't. For all sports though, I mean, it is the biggest thing. If you go to a basketball game, the place is packed. You go to football, they play for the Key City trophy. It's this huge key. Our wrestling meets it was awesome last year, and just as far as wrestling goes, the intensity of it, I feel like you always get their best performance when it's a Loras UD duel, and I just think it's just a good rivalry. It's in town. I mean, literally, you can see their campus from parts of our campus. So, I mean, there's really no like crossover or anything. Like I thought, I had a perceived notion that we were going to run into each other all the time. Like I was going to see John McGovern every day, going to the gas station or something, and I never see him. But yeah, I mean, it's just a very unique thing, and it's definitely a fun rivalry.
You mentioned Trevor Kittleson, who's on your staff, but you also brought John Aurelian up from Louisiana, who was wrestled at Jesuit and was not a Holy Cross guy initially. And how do you bring another guy from the Bayou up to these cold winters in the Upper Midwest?
I mean, me and Jono, we just kind of hit it off really, really easy. We were friends. He was probably one of my better friends in the coaching world down there. And, we hung out. He'd come over to the house. We had a pool. He'd come swimming, all that. I mean, just hanging out, grill outs. We had very similar friends. Like Adam Manguno was a Wartburg alum, and he was friends with Adam Manguno. So I mean, we were around each other a lot. And he always kind of joked like, "Hey, if you ever go on to coach in college again, don't forget about me down here." And a lot of times we'd he was doing Fargo camp or come over to our club, and we'd have kids train together. And I've watched him show technique, and I knew like, wow, this guy's got a wealth of knowledge in this sport, and he's really good at what he does. And he kind of hinted at to me like after my first year of being a head coach, like, hey, I think I might need a change. And I was like, sure, let's go. And I called him, and he moved up here, and that was that. And he's been doing a phenomenal job. I think he loves it. I think he loves being around wrestling. College wrestling, just having an opportunity to go watch an Iowa Okie State duel, or see wrestling on TV. It's just, I think he loves it. I don't think he likes the cold weather. I think he could do without that, but especially the snow. But he's doing a great job.
Now, as we wrap up this particular episode and we're talking about coaching, we've talked a lot about your high school coaching and then back into college, and of course your dad and his career. One thing I'm always curious about is how one develops the idea that they want to coach or the desire to coach. And we found in a lot of cases, coaches who had their parents, whether it be men's or women's sports, be a coach as well, have a different mindset on how to go about coaching. When did you first develop, I guess, the desire to be a coach? And was that something that was learned from your dad, or was it learned from the sport more so?
I think it was just like trial and error. Like I was just gonna, try coaching for this, just try it at Warburg. And I think I had a desire to maybe be a strength coach. I think that was kind of, being around Jed Smith at UNI. He taught a class that I took over the summer for Olympic lifting certification, and that's kind of how I wanted to get into coaching, was strength and conditioning. And then just hanging around like my dad and Keller, and they're in the offices and kids are just coming in, and I can see them just solving problems one by one every single day, just whether it was a girlfriend or whether it was a class or whether they had to motivate some kid. I think experiencing that firsthand from the other side, like, wow, you can really help kids. And then I went to a tournament the first time, and I think it was like at Stevens Point. It was the Pointer Open or something, and I was coaching and seeing a kid win, and I got like so excited for it, like a kid that I worked with. Just like that adrenaline and that high that you get when you see a kid accomplish something great was just I wanted it again and again and more. And just seeing the work and seeing the improvements and seeing kids accomplish their goals was just a very satisfying thing. And I think that ultimately is what kind of grabbed me and kept me in coaching.
I know you've talked to Kyle Klingman over the years, and he's always gonna ask you, like, well, what's your favorite Jim Miller story? What's your favorite Jim Miller? I'm gonna change that up. I got two questions that are not about your dad. They are about a Wartburg assistant coach, though. One you probably know very well. I want to know, what is the darkest shade of purple you've ever seen Chris Ortner turn? That's the first question. And two, what is your favorite Ortner story? They may be related.
There's probably a couple of them, but
as far as his pigment, man, he goes from like white to orange to blue to purple when he's coaching in the corner. It's great.
He's never really, he hasn't done that with me a whole lot. He probably did, but I'm sure he did. I just didn't notice it at the time. I didn't make Coach Ortner's job very easy sometimes. But no, what a great guy. I remember one time one time my junior year before the national finals, I can just remember how, he was like cracking jokes. And usually I can tell when Ortner's nervous, but my dad was a wreck. And I thought he was going to like throw up in the trash can. He wasn't faking it very well. And, Ortner was he was there and he was like cracking jokes with me about it. And it kind of calmed my nerves big time. We're like kind of making fun of my dad. Like, why is he so nervous? Like, calm down. Like, it's just wrestling. And, there was another time where I didn't realize it, but he acted like he was so mad sometimes when we'd wrestle. Like, I could tell like when he was going easy, and I could tell when he was going really hard, like when he was coming full blown at me. And I could tell like there was times where he would fake act like I beat him up. Like he let me like just tear him apart sometimes. And he would like kick a trash can, or he would like, be yelling to himself as the guys are running in a circle. And it took me a while to realize that he was faking it. But it just shows you how good of a coach he is, like that he's willing to like take a beat down to kind of improve an athlete's confidence, and it was always like right around those times, right before big matches, he would do that. Like all of a sudden he beat the crap out of me on Monday, but then all of a sudden like I'm doing whatever I need to do, whatever I want to him on Thursday, and we have a big tournament that weekend. And it's like, that was one thing that I took from him. Like, he's a very selfless person, and he was just out to look out for me. And it's definitely, there's a lot of lessons that I've learned from him for sure.
One thing we've neglected to discuss is this year's squad. I mean, you're 11-0. We haven't talked about a single wrestler on the team, and then I want to circle back a little bit because you got two guys that are nationally ranked, Guy Petrone and Jimmy Davis. Davis, #1 in the country in Division III. There's several guys I'm sure you want to talk about that's made this year really moving at 11-0. But what's the mood been like in the room, and how have those two specifically, since they're the ones ranked in Division III right now, really kind of moved the needle in terms of Loras's and your team's expectations?
Yeah, I mean, the mood in the room is awesome. We struggled when we came back from Christmas break because we were battling some of the flu season stuff. But now that we're getting everyone back to full health, it's been awesome. Kids, I think, are just as motivated as they've ever been. Jimmy is an awesome leader for the team. He leads by example. There's not a guy that works harder than he does. And I just think, you can just tell by his results. I think he's actually leading the nation in tech falls in Division III as well. So he scores a lot of bonus points, and that's huge in some of those really tight duels when you could score more bonus points than the other team. But yeah, I mean, we got multiple guys clicking on all cylinders. Quinn Gillum, our heavyweight, he's a Louisiana product. Guy Petrone, Louisiana product at 197. I believe maybe they both share one loss, maybe a piece, and yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, we got all cylinders running, and I'm as a coach, I'm just hoping not to screw it up for the end. I'm hoping to just keep everybody healthy, and just keeping the same format of one day at a time, and just trying to make every practice as important as we can, and each competition just as important as the next one. So yeah, it's been an unbelievable season for some of those guys, and hopefully, we'll be talking about a lot of some great successes at the end of the year for each one of those guys.
TJ Miller, the head coach at Loras College. Follow him on social media at Duhawk. That's DUHAWK Wrestling, and of course at Duhawks.com. So best of luck down the season. Iowa Conference duels this weekend again with 4 teams: Luther, Nebraska Wesleyan, Co., and Simpson, and of course that big date looming February 9th. If all things go according to plan, you'd be undefeated going into your old stomping grounds of Waverly with the Iowa Conference dual meet regular season title on the line. TJ, it's been very informative and educational, and best of luck to you guys the rest of the season.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.